Come again? You know I don't speak Spanish. In English, please. Huh? You pooped in the refrigerator.
Hello, Jedediah. Hello, Charlie. I didn't know we were speaking. Sure we're speaking, Jedediah. You're fired.
Pete, the personal rancor reflected in that remark I don't intend to dignify with comment. But I would like to address your general attitude of hopeless negativism.
Good. Well, drive carefully, because the life you save might mean your own. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sorry to bother you. I'm looking for Mrs. Lippman's family.
Hi, how are you? Always nice to see Tom Cook, my former co-host, former and the once and future co-host, puts these intros together, put those intros together, and it made me so happy. It filled me with glee to see a clip from Superfuzz in there. So I thank him from a distance for Superfuzz. Hey, how are you doing? This is Cinemaniacs. I am Mark. We are the Cinemaniacs. A little bit of a catch-up show this week because I was off due to the holiday and the building being closed. Hard to tape in here when the building is closed. So we're back with a bit of a catch-up. Some films that are award-nominated, maybe they're award-winning by now, and a couple new ones. First up is a film that I forgot the title of, so let me just look over here. Oh yeah, that one. Speaking of which, I referred to it earlier. You'd think I'd remember it. We have the latest take on the Arthurian tale. What happens when a youth finds a sword in a stone and adventure abounds and such? From the director of Attack the Block comes The Kid Who Would Be King.
Stronger than dirt. New Ajax, laundry detergent is stronger than dirt.
Points to anybody who's watching this on YouTube because you just didn't see a trailer that gave away all the surprises in the film. I knew nothing about this going in. I knew that it was a title. The title seemed like it was going to be pretty silly and lame to me. I'm not a big fan of kid-centric movies because the kids tend to be, I can't use the word I usually do, the kids tend to be unsavory and annoying, and it tends to focus on goo and stupid stuff and pop culture references, and this movie didn't do any of that. I had seen Attack the Block from a few years ago, British film about inner city, Londonish, let's say, tower block apartment building being attacked by aliens and the local toughs and youths who fend it off. I didn't really like that, so knowing that director did this movie made me a little concerned, but this was, to me, nothing like that, other than the very broad strokes. You have, normal people fighting off an extraordinary force. It's basically the King Arthur legend, but it's not saying this is in place of the King Arthur legend. This is saying the people in the film are aware of that, and it's Merlin, and it's the young Andy Serkis's son, he who is mocap king of the world, plays our lead here, and it's decent kids trying to overcome obstacles and work together, and all the messages that seem sappy but actually work really well in this movie. Effects are really good. It's really funny at times. Not having seen that trailer before I saw the film, where the movie goes was a surprise to me and very, very much fun. I've heard this compared to like Explorers and Time Bandits and other, 80s films and stuff. I would say this is a bit like Army of Darkness as well. I really, really enjoyed this a lot. And as I said, it's smart, it's got a good heart, it's got good effects, and it's a hell of a good time. So that means it's probably going to fail. So I would recommend, if this movie looks or sounds good to you, try to see it sooner than later, because I have a feeling that one or two bigger titles are going to come out over the next few weeks, and this one's going to get pushed into the smallest theater in the multiplex and then gone. Some people, they're wary of seeing a film that's British for some reason. I don't know if they think it's too smart for them or something. It's not. They have accents, but that's where ours came from, so it shouldn't be a big deal. I really, really had a good time with this. This is what I'm going to recommend all the parents I know take their kids to see. Parents who have smart kids, maybe parents who have dumb kids. This might help them not be as dumb. I don't know, but I really liked it. There's a guest star in this film that was shockingly not played up in the trailer, and I'm really glad it wasn't, because you see an older and a younger Merlin in this film, and And the older Merlin is somebody a lot of us like, a lot of people like, and a lot of people recognize, and I can't believe they didn't put that, they didn't spoil that in the trailer too. So anyway, Kid Who Would Be King in theaters now. I would say you really ought to go see this because it's a heck of a good time and smart. And I haven't seen a kids movie I've liked this much in quite a while. So there's that. Speaking of movies with people who have magical powers and grand schemes and Machiavellian machinations and other words that I may or may not understand before I say them, we have the next film from M. Night Shyamalan, who did films such as Unbreakable and Split, and this movie, which is a sequel to both Unbreakable and Split put together. It is the tale of a man, Bruce Willis, who has the ability to be, let's say, unbreakable, and what happens when he faces up against a man with 27 distinct personalities, one of which is the Beast. Well, this is going to shatter some things, maybe box office records, maybe expectations, but certainly Glass.
It's a bird! It's a plane! It's...
Underoos! Great Minerva! It's a real change of underwear. Wearing underoos is fun!
So, if you haven't seen Split, I'll give away the ending. If you haven't seen Split, at the end of it, it makes a major nod toward Unbreakable. And for anybody who didn't remember Unbreakable, which is now maybe a 20-year-old film, it didn't mean squat. It's like, hey, why is Bruce Willis suddenly into this movie? But people who did like Unbreakable, it was, oh my God, they're crossing over and they're bringing this movie back. Now, Unbreakable was Shyamalan's, I think, second film after his big breakthrough, Sixth Sense. I believe it was Sixth Sense, Signs, and Unbreakable. I could have that reversed. And it did fairly well. I remember seeing it when it came out and thinking it was okay, but I don't know anything that he has done that I've liked as much as The Sixth Sense, and that was such a shock and surprise because you didn't see the big twist at the end, and it may have sort of cursed him into being told or believing that he always has to have a twist at the end of his films. I think a lot of times it's not worth all the trouble to get there, but anyway. So Glass, basically you have the character who was the main character / villain from Split, and the character Bruce Willis played in Unbreakable, and the character Samuel Jackson played in Unbreakable are all in a mental facility where this doctor believes that these people are just suffering from delusions of grandeur and superiority and that they really don't have superpowers. And the film, maybe at its strongest, might be the moments where it makes the audience wonder, well, maybe these people aren't superpowered, they're just, strongly motivated, I guess. But the problem is, when we're watching it, we know they have superpowers. We've seen these other movies, so we know it's not in their head. So to sit there and watch, so much of the film be walking in circles around this conceit that we know isn't a thing seems like a waste of time. I didn't really care for Glass all that much. It's mostly just people talking. If you really like Unbreakable and Split, it's more of those two films and probably interesting to see them come together and see where this movie ultimately goes. But really, most of this movie are these people in, let's say, their hospital rooms or prison cells going on monologues and talking while the doctor talks to the individuals, and ultimately something happens outdoors and then the movie's over. And I was just like, really? That's all this is? This is like a $6 Million Man episode. Great idea, great concept for a show, but 90% of it is guys leaning on the edge of a desk having a conversation, and then 5 minutes at the end there's a little bit of action, and then you freeze frame. So I didn't get a lot out of Glass. I think there are people who did like it a lot. I think Shyamalan fans probably will like it a lot. I'm interested in hearing from people. I'm hearing that people are going to see this who've never seen either of those other two movies. I'm sure this works okay that way. I always watch any kind of a sequel with the eye for, if for some reason I'm watching this and I haven't seen the original, would it make sense? And I think this does a pretty good job in explaining everything that had come before it. It's very cool that they bring back the kid who plays Bruce Willis's son in Unbreakable, playing his son in this movie, 2 decades later. That's kind of cool. He's not a bad actor. But ultimately, I lost interest before the movie was over, and I was just waiting for it to do what it was going to do and wrap up. And at the end, there's sort of a twist, but at that point, I just didn't care. And maybe it's indicating another movie is coming. I don't know. Glass was not for me. Speaking of movies about animals, we have a family film up next. Family film, maybe this is a kid's movie. We'll talk about that afterwards. It is about what happens when a precious pooch is separated from its family by hundreds of miles and decides to go homeward bound to make an incredible journey, much like Milo and Otis once did, and it is called A Dog's Journey Home.
Added tang might please you too. I'll slide into an oven-fresh bun. And I'm ready for your eating fun.
Why don't you try a juicy good hot dog? Mmm, delicious.
This was another film that I had only heard the title of. I hadn't seen a poster image, I hadn't seen a trailer, I hadn't seen a TV ad or anything like that, so I went in totally blind on this. By the title, I kind of figured it was about a dog, you know, out in the wilderness, and like I alluded to, it was another, you know, Homeward Bound or Milo and Otis or something like that. And it pretty much is. It mega points for the dog not being CGI because, I'm sorry, CGI looks fake. It still looks fake. In some ways it looks okay and you can accentuate a scene or you can patch up something, but when you're trying to create a living thing, 99% of the time it doesn't look real. There are moments in this film where the dog interacts with, you see in the trailer, a mountain lion or a baby mountain lion cub and things like that. The mountain lion, I believe, is entirely CGI, and I could always tell. And there's some moments where the dog is frolicking with that cub where I'm like, this looks like a video game. This doesn't look real. Other than that, it was really cool to see an actual animal that had been trained to do these various things. I was sort of on the fence with this one. I watch these movies and I say, are they a family film or are they a kids film? Now, to me, a family film is one that the adults can go and see with the kids and everybody gets something out of it and you're not just patiently waiting for it to end, hopefully not on your phone like the dirtbag parents I often see in the theaters who just, you know, way to engage with your kid. Just sit there and look at your phone the whole time. This kind of leans more toward kid movie to me, just because of the tone of the whole thing. Basically, it opens and a young guy and his female coworker are in this collapsed house, and they see that there are stray cats and a dog down there, and they're trying to rescue these animals before the evil developer, you know, crushes it all and kills the animals. They adopt the dog. The dog is a great member of the family. They're not supposed to have a dog, and bad things happen, and they wind up getting separated from the dog. In that, Ashley Judd plays the mother of this young man, and she is Army veteran with PTSD. So part of this early on takes place at a VA hospital where the dog is sort of like an unofficial therapy dog. And it kind of gets into that. And I was surprised to see like a heavy subject in this movie a little bit, because predominantly it's about a dog, you know, in the wilderness, you know, finding its way back. But it does deal with like veteran affairs a little bit. And it's inoffensive. It's nice outdoors nature footage. It's a little bit of peril here and there, as they say on the posters. The dog talks in this movie. Now, I'm a fan of talking animal movies from way back, unless it's Show Dogs, which was a huge piece of garbage. But the thing about this is that nobody can hear the dog talk, so it's sort of like you're hearing the dog's thoughts, and it's like mega cutesy. It's really like almost gratingly like cutesy the whole time, and that was hard to take for me. The whole time I'm watching the movie, I'm wondering, did they intend for this to be a talking dog movie, or did they do this after the fact? And I really kind of think, for the most part, you could have done this without the dog narration. You'd have long stretches of the film where nobody's talking, but people not talking is a good thing sometimes. I'm sure people who watch this program would wish I'd talked a little bit less. There's moments where it works, and it kind of adds a little something to it, and it's cute, but I didn't care for that too much. Overall, fine for kids. I wonder if it's a little heavy for kids. I mean, there's like adult human drama. I'm not talking about dirty stuff, but there's adult stuff going on in the movie that I don't know if kids would stay focused to that or not. All this stuff about PTSD and you know, licensing laws and leash laws and stuff like that, maybe not. But the dog is really cute and the dog talks, so maybe that's fine for kids. There was a pretty sizable audience when I went to see this, a mixed audience of adults and kids. Pretty emotional at times. This is kind of a crying movie, a crying sad, crying happy movie. Not too heavy, but it's there. So your mileage may vary. I think if you have a kid who likes dogs, who likes animals, no problem. I got no beef with this movie. But if you're an adult who's looking for a movie to watch, well, if you like dogs, it might be this one. Up next, speaking of movies for grown-ups. So I'm at the theater this weekend. I saw the 3 movies I needed to see for this week at Keene Cinemas in town. And I saw them back to back. The timing worked out great. It was one into another into another. And as I came out of Kid Who Would Be King, the place was filled with grown-ups. Like, I was the youngest guy there. It was crazy. And I'm like, ooh, cool. It's always nice when the theater plays movies for adults who don't want to just see lasers and things blowing up and talking dogs. So most of the people who were there were going to see this next movie that I went to see. This as I didn't get a chance to do the research. From director-writer Adam McKay, who's done a lot of silly, goofy Will Ferrell movies, comes this true tale of former Vice President Dick Cheney. Takes you from his let's say, reckless, 20-somethings up into the present day, and focuses primarily on his time as vice president under George W. Bush. And it is kind of weird, kind of wacky. We'll talk about it after this trailer for Vice. True life story, based on fact, the film claims. It is not an unbiased take on these events by any stretch of the imagination. I really wanted to see. This is periods. There are periods of history that were so ubiquitous or distasteful to me that I chose to sort of shield myself from them while I lived through them. And I kind of want to give it a period of time and then just read a good book. Give me a nice 200-300-page book about that period of time. And it's like the OJ thing. I didn't want to know about it at the time. It was tabloid TV, whatever. Now that time has passed, sure, I'll read a book about that. I'll watch a 2-hour documentary. That's kind of what I am with the Dick Cheney era stuff. So after it was over, I really wanted to do a little research to see how accurate this was, because it is a very damning portrait of this guy and a lot of the things he did and a lot of the end result of the things he did. It really ties then to now in a big way toward the end, a lot like Black Klansman did. But I don't know. So it says it's real, but it's also very comedic. Like, this is more of a comedy than that lets on. I mean, it's very serious too, but it's very light in tone. From the guy who makes Will Ferrell movies. It's really kind of all over the place stylistically. It jumps around in time. It freeze frames. It has people talking to the camera. It has people doing really silly things in the context of recounting bits of history. We don't know what these private conversations that were held, if they're true or not. There's actually a moment if you see this, and especially if you like it, but if you see this, stay into the credits a little bit, because there are end credits and then it pauses and we cut to this focus group that we've been cutting to throughout the film that allegedly helped guide policy in the White House at that time. And they directly address kind of what I'm talking about. And it's funny and it's very now, and I appreciated that. So, okay, so if you're anti-Dick Cheney and that White House, then you're probably going to love it. If you're pro, you're probably going to not like it. But I don't know, because I'm not you and you're not me. I think the movie is occasionally quite funny. It is, the performances are really good. You want people to look like the people they're supposed to be playing, but sometimes you don't get the right actor for it. Steve Carell as Rumsfeld was a really good choice. But Christian Bale as Cheney. There are times where I kept wanting to take my glasses off and just kind of fuzzy watch the movie, because he looks a hell of a lot like the guy and he talks a lot like the guy. They did a really good job with the casting in this. Everybody in the movie uniformly is quite good. So naturally, it's up for a lot of awards and such. It is just unusual. If you're going to see this, be prepared that it's not a linear storyline. It gets a bit wacky at times. It makes editorial comments on it. It's got the F word in the opening crawl. I mean, it's an unusual film. And I wasn't quite sure how I felt about it at the end, because I'm like, yeah, it's really a hit piece, and it's really got an agenda, which is fine, because every movie does. But I hate for Hollywood biopics or films based on fact to be taken by a lot of people as fact, because a lot of times they do. Now, that's why I like this History versus Hollywood website. It'll tell you what's accurate and what's not, because I think most people are happy to watch. People are going to watch Bohemian Rhapsody and say, "Oh, that's exactly how that happened." In reality, not really. Those are the right songs. Those were those guys' names, but it's not quite accurate. So I hate for somebody to have their only opinion of this period of time and these people based on this movie if it's not real. But I don't know if it is or not. So why should I speak? For I know nothing. Speaking of films that are about political machinations and power grabs and various sundry things, we have a tale that throws us back a couple hundred years from the events in Vice. And it takes us overseas to Scotland and England back in the hundreds, where you had Queen Elizabeth, Queen somebody? We had a queen. She was a queen. The queen part I'm accurate on. And then you had another woman who was the Queen of Scotland, who believed she was the rightful heir to the throne of England. And it's what happened when those heads butt and swords are unsheathed due to the machinations and wranglings of Mary, Queen of Scots.
What is life like as a stomach?
Oh, boy, it was humdrum. I mean, until what's-his-name discovered Tony's Pizza.
Okay, sometimes I see trailers for movies that are people in uncomfortable-looking clothes from a long time ago with rooms that were probably very cold and dim, and I think that is going to be a big pile of boring. And then I go see them, and they're movies like this and The Favorite, and you're like, no. Yeah, they talk a little funny, but this is the nastiest, most freaky stuff. It's wonderful. So basically the story is you have Mary who's been away in France for a while. It took me a little while to figure out who was who and what was going on, which is like any kind of period piece that has a lot of history that sets up where you're going to go. She comes back from France after being away for a while to resume her throne in Scotland. A lot of people aren't too thrilled about that. The Queen of England doesn't want her getting too close to her throne because she doesn't feel like she deserves it because they're half-sisters or they're in the same family, the royal line. And it's all of this back and forth. It starts off as, very light politics with envoys going back and forth and messages going back and forth. And then it gets nasty. And then it's people getting thrown in jail and killed and poisoned and marrying awful people. And it is a soap opera in the greatest sense of that term. The only way it could be better is if it could be like Dark Shadows and there'd be vampires. But sadly there aren't. At least they were kept off screen. You have David Tennant as this Rasputin kind of crazy religious guy who's ranting and raving and trying to rile the rabble to fight against her. You have Margot Robbie, who's just great in everything, and she's the Queen of England who's going slowly, insane and sick. Saoirse Ronan, who I loved in Lady Bird, is Mary Queen of Scots in this. This is really, really good. It's a great big screen movie. The costumes are amazing. The castles are amazing. You watch these and you think about how dark was it back in the days before electricity? When you're walking these huge hallways that are dank and dark and freezing, all you've got is a candle to light your way. It reminded me of The Favourite in many ways, just some similar things. And actually, I believe one of the actor who's in this film, who's the man who is the Queen's betrothed or wants to be betrothed, he was also the same character essentially for Emma Stone in The Favourite. So this was really, really good. If you saw The Favourite, which I highly, highly recommend, this is another good one in that realm. It is historical, it is epic, and it is not boring. I will tell you that. So that's all that is in theaters currently that I saw. There's still a few more things out there that I haven't seen playing catch-up. If they come to town locally or if I see them on the road, I'll throw them on the roster for a future week. We now move on to that which you can see on the home video format, platform, stream, device of your choice. First up this is a film I saw in the theater, and I haven't seen since I saw it in the theater, so recollections might be a little fuzzy on this one. We have Gerard Butler as the only man in the world who can save us from nuclear Armageddon when Russians kidnap violently via coup the Russian president, and he and his American submarine guys need to slide under the ice and get that guy out of there in Hunter Killer.
That's how the Navy hunts subs. And that's what you do in Mattel's new Sonar Sub Hunt game.
This is the kind of movie that in the old days they would have trailers or TV ads or posters, and they would reference all these other classics. In the tradition of the Hunt for Red October and Crimson Tide comes Hunter Killer. Pretty much, yeah. I don't remember those other ones terribly well, so I can't say how similar this is to those. It feels different enough. Similarly, it's a submarine film and there's high stakes involved. So you have Butler, who's this guy who's kind of, it's funny because Gerard Butler's Scottish, and like many actors from overseas, they never let him play an American in a movie. So it's funny that it opens up and he's hunting in Scotland, and I'm like, oh my God, are they actually going to acknowledge that this guy is Scottish? Maybe it was just sort of like a nod and a wink to that fact. He's on vacation and he gets pulled back because this thing has gone down in Russia, and he has to slide over there and kind of get a SEAL team, I believe, in and out of this Russian port without causing World War III. It's a really decent thriller. I really enjoyed this a lot. I mean, I wouldn't say it was great. I probably would never willingly watch it again, but in the theater as a matinee, this was a lot of fun. We were talking off air. This is the kind of thing that's going to show up on TNT or TBS or Spike or something on a Sunday afternoon, and you'll sit and watch it and have a good time with it. Stretched out to 4.5 hours due to commercials. So you have a pretty familiar looking cast overall. You have Gary Oldman as he's kind of slumming. He's just some American dignitary. You have Common as some kind of military guy. I've seen him do a lot better stuff. I've seen them both do a lot better stuff. But you don't watch a movie like this for the acting. You watch it for stuff blowing up and the things going ping and the rivets shooting out and all that stuff. And that's all there. Like U-571 is another good sub movie that I liked a lot. So I was with it. I thought it was really tense. I thought it was well done. You always assume that the worst is not going to happen at the end of these movies, and I won't give away whether it does or not, but it's a Hollywood movie, so you kind of know. But I thought Hunter Killer was a lot of fun if you like sub-movies. You can certainly do a lot worse, and this is not one of those. So, speaking of films that are based on reality and heavy drama and make you want to claw your eyes out before they're over, we're not talking about Master of Disguise. This is a film based on a true story about a young man who is from a very religious upbringing, comes out to his parents as being gay, and they send him to this conversion therapy retreat, prison, I don't know what you want to call it. And what happens when it's called Boy Erased.
Then the heads are put on racks and sent to the makeup room. Look, they're passing a rack full of arms coming back. My goodness, but things happen around here fast.
For me, I think this was probably one of the better movies I saw last year. Not necessarily a whole lot of smiles going on in this movie. I think eventually there is, but it's a pretty rough a lot of the way. So the story is a young guy from a very, very Christian family. Father is a preacher, mother is a preacher's wife, and as opposed to a preacher's cousin. Well, I guess in some parts of the world that might be okay. And they have a hard time with him saying, this is who I am and what I am. This is just, this is how it is. So they send him to this gay conversion therapy place run by, I'm blanking on the man's name, run by Joel Edgerton, who directed this film, interestingly enough. And it's interesting because when I saw this in the theater, I had just watched a recent Jonestown documentary, and I saw a lot of the same techniques that Jim Jones used on the followers of the People's Temple that this guy at the gay conversion therapy was doing. It was really creepy. And you come to really not physically, you come to thoroughly dislike this guy and what he's doing to these kids. And it's this back and forth. It's a little bit nonlinear, which threw me for a loop at first, but then I kind of got it. And it's this kid who doesn't want to be different. It's just the way he is. And he doesn't want to disappoint and anger his parents, but it's the struggle between him and his parents and him. And Russell Crowe, the very straight ahead, this is what I believe and this is the way it is. And Nicole Kidman, who tries to support both the men in her life. It was really good. It's sad, it's true, it's interesting, and kind of powerful in the end. So everybody in it's really good. I don't know how this is faring for award status in all of the weekly award shows that are going on now. I think it's worthy of some, but maybe some people think differently. So that is Boy Erased. That is out now on video. And then we have, okay, here's something a little bit different. We have a film that is currently available on a streaming service. Usually I'm talking about things that are available in multiple places, but as far as I know right now, this is only available on Film Movement Plus, which is a monthly subscription service that sort of gears itself toward eclectic foreign art house films that you don't normally see anywhere else, which to me is a good thing. And this is the latest gangster film from Japanese filmmaker, actor, former comedian Takeshi Kitano, and it is entitled Outrage Coda.
Here's the hungriest cowboy on the range, all set to dig right in.
This is the, I believe, third film in a series. They're all entitled Outrage something, so this is Outrage Coda. I never saw the other films. I'd seen a few Kitano films, Fireworks and Sonentin and Hanabai years ago, and they're good. Something about Japanese cinema, I always have a little joke. I usually stand up to do this, so I can't really do it here. But Japanese and French cinema is always sort of 2 steps forward, and then you walk in a circle for a little while, and then, oh yeah, and then 2 steps forward. They're very slow. So this is not a very long movie, so it doesn't have the standard Japanese 2 hours and 45 minutes thing going for it. But it is a lot of talking. It's a lot of men in suits in rooms talking. The basic storyline is there's this guy who is, I believe from Korea, I could be wrong, maybe Japan, visiting Korea, and he wrongs a couple of prostitutes that are under the supervision of Kitano, and Kitano basically tells him, you're going to pay for what you did and then get out of here. And this other gangster who's the wronger is not too thrilled with that, so he basically kills the people he's supposed to pay and goes back home. And it basically starts a gang war between these rival mob families. A lot of it is people talking. Eventually, it gets very violent and very bloody. I know some of the ad copy I was seeing was saying, you know, triple-digit body count, all that. There is an insanely violent scene, but really the majority of this is just people talking and trying to make arrangements and trying to fix things and threatening each other and all that, which is fine. It was probably a little less going on than I would have liked in the film. I can't compare it to the other films in the series. I will say it stands on its own fine. I didn't feel like I was missing anything. I felt like I was just watching this movie. The fact that there are 2 others that come before it didn't bother me at all, so don't let that stand in your way. If you like Kitano, he is what he is. He is the cold steel badassery with shades on. I don't know if he takes his shades off in this movie, actually. And it was interesting. It was just slower than personally I was into. Film Movement Plus is interesting. I'd never experienced that before. I was given a subscription, limited subscription, so I could watch this and check it out. It's interesting. Some people would look at that and go, I've never heard of any of these movies. I look at it and go, cool, I've never heard of any of these movies. These are movies that didn't play theatrically, perhaps in my area, might not be on video very easily gotten on video. So to me, I'm excited to dig in. So as I have time, I'll probably review a few more things from Film Movement Plus. If they ask me to, I will, but otherwise I'll try to find a couple more before my subscription runs out, just to see if there's anything that's cool and worth talking about. Speaking of worth talking about, oh boy. Sometimes they announce titles and I am flabbergasted. This is the Arrow Video Corner. And this time we're talking about, this is just one movie this week. The next couple weeks it's going to be a lot. And this is a film that was controversial in its day. It was a box office disaster, I believe. It has its fans. I think it falls into that category I call Saw It When You Were a Kid. If you saw this when you were a kid, you may be very impressed with this movie and thrilled that this set is coming out. Certainly, anybody who is a fan of it is going to fall over the back of their couch when they see how much there is to delve into, the depths of which you can delve into this film. This is Kevin Costner's famous/infamous/classic Waterworld.
Finger. Band-Aid plastic bandage and collar. Hurt elbow. Band-Aid bandage. It's blue.
So I get emails from our friends at MVD who send us, they distribute Arrow in America, and I love Arrow. I mean, I think I probably don't like 1 out of every 10 Arrow titles that come out. And that's not just because they're free, it's because they just put out the kind of stuff I like. And once in a while, they'll get a hold of something that was a major mainstream release in an era that I lived through, which is unusual because their stuff tends to be 60s, 70s, and older. So when they announced that Waterworld was on their list, at first I thought, is this April? And then I looked and I'm like, well, no, they're putting out Waterworld. So it's a movie that I give every movie a fair shake. If it looks bad to me, I may go in with a little bit of an attitude, but a lot of movies will come out. Ishtar was one. I mean, hell, there was a time when Terminator 2, people were saying, oh, or Titanic, it's Cameron's folly. He's spending so much money on this dumb movie in Mexico and it'll fail. Well, maybe not. So certain movies, the entertainment press has it out for and just want it to sink, pardon the pun. And Waterworld was one of those. This movie was really lambasted when it came out. It was poorly reviewed. People had their knives out before the movie even hit the screens. I went to see it at the drive-in with something else, and I just remember thinking it wasn't very good. And when I saw that I was going to have to watch Waterworld again, I'm like, oh God, I'm going to have to watch Waterworld again. This set from Arrow has 3 versions of the movie. It has the theatrical cut. I may be wrong, but I believe the theatrical cut, an extended cut that was for TV, and then an extended cut that was the European version, which was basically the TV version with all of the profanity and whatever stuff that was cut out for American TV left in. So I don't know why we need both of those versions. I would have thought just the extended would have been fine. But anyway, I chose to watch the extended cut because fan theories are that that's the better version, more is explained or whatever. And I always feel like, give me the longest version, and I saw the theatrical ones. So what did I think of Waterworld 20-something years later? I still think it's not that great. To me, Waterworld suffers because it is a wet Mad Max. It is the same thing. It is, stylistically, it's Mad Max. The story-wise, it's more or less Mad Max. And I love Mad Max and The Road Warrior, and Thunderdome is not as bad as people give it credit for. But for me, this was just the same thing. And it was, to me, less interesting because it was on water. Dennis Hopper's in it, and he's totally over the top as this bad guy and kind of cheesy. It did not work for me. Certainly well made. I'm not going to say this wasn't really well mounted, and the money is on the screen, and it's really impressive what they pulled off with this. But for me, it just felt like, I hate to say it, a watered down version of Mad Max. And if I want to watch that, I'll watch The Road Warrior. You know. So if people like this movie, and I know there are a lot, and I'm sure it's because they saw it when they were kids. And it was a movie that was, you know, for all of its theoretical failure, this was really, there were Waterworld toys, there were Waterworld Happy Meal things. There was a stunt show at Universal for a while that was Waterworld based. So I don't know how much of that was one of those. When I was a kid, I went to Toys R Us. This is mid-'80s. And they had a whole aisle of clearance toys, and there were all these Dune toys, because boy howdy did they think Dune was going to be the next Star Wars for kids. And they maybe were a little premature on manufacturing the Dune toys. That could have been the case with Waterworld, I don't know. So you have 3 cuts of the movie that look great. You have hours of extras. You have all the original promo stuff that was created back then, and a whole bunch of new interviews and behind the scenes and retrospectives and stuff. So I didn't really delve into any of that, didn't dive in too deep. But this is really the package. If you are somebody who always held a candle for Waterworld, if you always thought, everybody hates this, but I think this movie is great, happy birthday, because Arrow has just done you a big one. There are movies that I like that don't get respect, and once in a great while they'll get a huge video release, and I'm like, I don't know who else is buying this, but I'm thrilled. So I think people who like Waterworld, it's hard for me not to laugh when I say Waterworld, I'm sorry. I always just thought it was garbage, but there are people who like it, and it is out there now, and if you love Waterworld, you've got a giant set that I cannot believe anybody else is going to attempt to do this one better anytime soon, unless, I don't know what, unless Kevin Costner is revealed to be Jesus and everybody really reassesses his career. I think this Arrow set with Waterworld is pretty much as good as it's going to get. So that's all I have for this week. I'll be back next week with a long list of stuff, a lot of Arrow discs and a lot of other interesting, sort of lesser-known video releases that I'm hopefully going to have watched in time for next week. In the theater are 2 titles that I've never heard of, so I may not see anything new in the theater next weekend, we'll see, but I'll have plenty to talk about. So until next week, I am Mark, and we are the Cinemaniacs. Bye.